Welcome to the StarCraft 2 World Championship Series America Season 3 Round of 16 presented by Newegg. I'm your host Joshua Clutch Gray. Newegg is in the house. They're excited to be here. Today is Group D, the group of death, maybe not, but the group of Terran. Unfortunately, Major, due to an illness, will not be joining us. He will be forfeiting his matches, but we wish him a speedy recovery. Today, the first matchup will be between Hart and Neeb. Hart, if he gets first place, has a shot to make it to BlizzCon. Neeb, unfortunately, does not have enough WCS points, even with a first place win, to make it to BlizzCon, but he's still fighting for the good old US of A. So America will be behind Neeb today, but Polt will be playing in the winner's matchup. He is Captain America himself, and he has already secured his spot for BlizzCon. Those are the matches today, folks, and that's what's at stake still for first place, $25,000 and $100,000 going to the first place player at BlizzCon happening in November. Let's go ahead and check in with my co-host Cam Dozer and Rotterdam. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Josh. Cam Dozer here, hanging out with Rotterdam today over at the social corner. Roddy, I know you weren't feeling all that great yesterday, but you are a champion, and I know if there's anything that can get you excited, it's some sick StarCraft. How are you feeling about the TvT today?
I'm feeling a lot better, and I feel excited as one could be for a three-man group. I still think it's going to be an awesome day, and I still think we're going to see a couple of awesome moves here and there. And we have three amazing players, and for all three of them, we have a story on its own, of course. So I'm still very excited, and I just hope for an awesome day.
And our first match of the day is going to be Hart versus Neeb. It's a tough draw for Neeb to start out your round of 16 against a player like Hart. If he's going to take him down, though, how does he do it?
I think above all, just believe in himself. He has played some phenomenal TvTs in the past. Neeb is a player that both Nate and me have been showing a lot of love to in the past, because we really love watching his games. We loved casting him as well. And even last season, you know, people often think like, Neeb, this year, it's like we suddenly started to know him a little bit. Even last year, he was competing in Premier League multiple times, and he got closer and closer. This is his second round of 16 appearance, the first time that it's actually in the US, because of course, season 1 was played in Germany. Against Hart, he's just going to have to be really solid. He's going to have to make sure that he doesn't take crippling amounts of damage in that crazy early game TvT, the madness that we currently find ourselves in that matchup. But if he makes it past that mark and he's not too behind, if he just plays his game, I think he has a realistic shot at doing very well today.
All right, now the second match, again, unfortunately, Major. We're rooting for you at home. Hope you feel better, Major. But Polt, who would have played against him, is going to take on the winner of Hart versus Neeb. Now, his TvT is kind of hard to say, because in Detroit, it looked sick. He took down Tasia in dominating fashion, and then just the next weekend in Toronto, he lost to Bunny. Where do you think Polt's mind frame is right now?
I think it's still really good, because Polt has had an awesome year, and he's been always in the round of 16. That's an achievement on its own. And of course, recently finally winning Battlegrounds Detroit, even though he was performing well in multiple tournaments like MLG Anaheim, other Red Bull events, he just couldn't win one. Now he finally got that monkey off his back. He won a game, or he won a big tournament again. And yeah, Toronto was disappointing, and yes, he lost in TvT, which was surprising after he just took out Tasia. You know, some people think he's the best Terran in the world, or at least one of the absolute best Terrans in the world. But it was a different playstyle from Bunny. Polt obviously needed some time to get used to that. He wasn't used to that Neil Raven, double medevac, double tank drop. I don't think Polt has to worry all that much. And above all, you know, Polt is in such a comfortable position. He has one shot at 2 best of 3s. Like, you know, that must feel pretty good.
Yeah, plus his spot is almost 100% secured for BlizzCon, so that's got to take a little bit of the pressure off, although of course you still want to win every tournament you participate in. Well, thank you very much for your thoughts. I want to get this show on the road, but before we do that, I got to throw a big shout out to our sponsors, Newegg. We got a couple of their guys in the house today. Can't wait to hear some of the promos they're going to be throwing out there. And I also, again, just like yesterday, want to know the questions that you people watching at home want to hear me ask these players when they advance to the round of 8. Tweet me your questions at CamDozer using the hashtag WCS to get your question read aloud on the stream and get a little bit into the minds of some of these high-level players. So I'm going to be back very soon with the pregame match interview. But before we do that, let's kick it over to the desk with QXC and Nate.
Thanks, Cameron. I think it's safe to say that as two Terrans, we are pretty damn excited for this match.
This is the best day.
Yeah, it's all Terran. It's a Terran fest. Of course, Unathanius with me is QXC. For you guys, I guess we kind of just said we are both Terrans, big Terran fans. I'm a Neeb fan. I'm a Polt. I guess we're probably fans of all these players because they're all Terrans.
I'm a good play fan.
Yeah.
I just want to see good games.
I'll take it.
Yeah. And I think that is exactly what we're going to get today. All of these players have shown exceptional and consistent performances in recent history. And of course, Hart doing quite well in the previous season at WCS. Pult just coming off his recent victory in Red Bull Detroit. And I guess Neeb has kind of been hovering around. We don't see him at a whole lot of LAN events.
Yeah, he's made it into Premier League 5 times. This is the second time he's actually playing in the offline portion, the round of 16. And if you guys are wondering like what else is happening in the round of 16, this is Group D, but this is only the second group that we've been playing out to make sure that schedules work. Group A and B will be played next week. So if you want to see Aigas, you're an Aussie out there, you want to see the Canadian Scarlet play Jadon, Tasia, Season 2 champion Pig Baby, that all those players will be competing next week to wrap up the round of 16.
Right. But for today, we have Pult, Neeb, and Hart. As Clutch mentioned earlier, Major is ill and was unable to attend at the last moment, so this will be a 3-man group today.
That's right. Still 3 very good players having to duke it out. I think it's safe to say that when you look at the 3 of them, overall, the results kind of, they lean towards Pult. He's had a lot of second-place finishes in Premier tournaments throughout the course of this year. He did, as you mentioned, take that first place just recently at the Battlegrounds Detroit. But I think Hart has a big chance to upset. However, Neeb is definitely the underdog of this group.
Yeah, I think Neeb is certainly the least expected to advance. Probably, if there was anybody in this entire round of 16 that we would call the dark horse, it would be him.
Yeah.
But he has shown some exceptional games in the past, going basically toe-to-toe with Pult in the past, players like Tasia in TvT, and although he wasn't really winning all of those series, he was putting on such exceptional games that it showed a lot of promise.
Yeah, there were a couple of really close calls, especially in his series versus Pult. Of course, if you guys want to weigh in on who you think will be able to win, aside from tweeting at us, we have the ESL Fantasy League. It's as simple as going to fantasy.eslgaming.com/SC2. If you've not signed up yet, group selection for this group has already closed, but you can still pick for groups A and B, which we say will play next week. You can pick from the playoffs. And at this stage, you're just picking one guy. Of course, you can also sign up for the ESL Fantasy for the GSL as well as WCS Europe, as both of those tournaments are still going on. And I think in this group, the most popular pick should definitely be Pult. I picked Hart. I wanted to put a little faith in someone I think is getting better this year, but maybe not quite up there just yet.
I could definitely see Hart advancing over Pult in this group. But it's just so hard to say exactly what each player is going to be bringing to this matchup. TvT is very different from what many people remember it in kind of the later stages of Wings of Liberty.
Yeah.
And even early Heart of the Swarm, it's become a much more frantic, aggressive matchup. The medevac speed boost has altered basically every aspect of this matchup. It's become so aggressive and so quick that little mistakes here and there can end the game in just a moment.
Yeah, TvT's gotten pretty crazy, and we're going to dive into a whole lot more about that as we get to the vetoes. But first, let's hear from our 2 players going up against each other in the first match, Hart and Neeb.
Thank you, Nate. Cam Dozer here once again with the 3 competitors who will be duking it out today for those 2 spots moving into the round of 8. Neeb, let's start with you. You're only 16 years old, and you've already accomplished something that many StarCraft players, almost all StarCraft players, will never accomplish, getting to the round of 16 in WCS America. What do you think the future holds for you?
I'm actually very excited for my future. Since I'm only in high school, I have a lot of time to play, and I can delay college and stuff, so I can just play full-time for a while.
All right, great. Now, also, you're the only American left in the tournament, waving that U.S. flag, those stars and stripes. Does that hold any significance to you in WCS America?
America.
That's what I want to hear. All right, a true patriot. Now, Pult, let's talk with you. I'm very interested because we're talking about your TvT, and one day you were just crushing Tasia, who is an amazing player, and then you're losing to Bunny, who's also an amazing player. I don't want to take anything from him, but it was an unexpected loss. How's your TvT feeling going into these matches?
Yeah, it was unexpected to me too, but because it was very after Detroit, I didn't have really time to rest and prepare for next match. So it was kind of easy for him to counter my build orders. So, but I had enough time to prepare for these matches, so I'm pretty confident right now.
All right, great. Now, 2014 didn't start out very strong for you, especially considering how successful you were in 2013. But now you're starting to win tournaments again, you're placing high in other tournaments, and you're looking like Polt all over again. Why have you been able to bring that success back around?
To be honest, last year was too successful, but this year was not that bad. Just the only bad part was the finals. But if I won like 2 or 3 finals, I could won 4 or more than that, more trophies. But I just lost it in the finals. But I broke it, that bad thing. I finally won a championship. So now I'm in in very good shape right now. So I think this WCS America will be mine.
All right, very good. Now, Hart, you traveled pretty far to get here today, all the way from Korea. And I was hanging out with you earlier, and you wanted some coffee. You were really tired. Have you woken up? How are you feeling going into your match versus Neeb?
김민혁 선수 오늘 대회에 하는 참가자 중에서 가장 멀리서 오셨는데 아까도 커피를 마셔야 되겠다라고 말씀도 하시고 어떻게 지금은 좀 잠도 좀 깨시고 괜찮으신가요?
아직도 피곤합니다.
I'm still tired.
All right. Now, if you win WCS America, that'll give you 2,000 WCS points, which will put you to 3,250 into the top 16, and you'll probably have a spot at BlizzCon. I want to know, do you look that far forward, or do you just try to focus one match at a time?
김민혁 선수 이번 시즌을 만약에 우승을 하시면은 블리즈컨을 갈 수 있는 찬스가 많이 높아지는데 지금 상황에서 거기까지 지금 내다보고 계시는지 아니면은 한 경기 한 경기만 집중해서 하려고 생각을 하고 계신지 말씀 좀 들어보겠습니다.
내다보고는 있는데 떨어지면은 내다본 게 아니니까 네, 열심히는 하겠습니다.
I'm kind of looking forward to going to BlizzCon, but then again, if I say that I do, and if I get knocked out, then it just stays as the hopeful objective. So at this moment, I'm just going to say I'm going to focus on every single matchup.
All right, very good. Well, best of luck to all of you gentlemen in your matches today. We're about to get the map vetoes underway between Neeb and Hart, but for now, let's kick it back over to QXC and Nate at the caster desk.
Thanks. I think Neeb has put it aptly for the American audience out there, hoping to get some stars and stripes moving on.
Yeah, it's been a long time since American players have really done well in general. I mean,
yeah,
there's really no other way to put it. Players like Illusion have kind of fallen off recently and not been playing as much. Suppy is returning to school. Sasquatch has kind of stopped playing. Hydra, of course, retired some time ago. I'm behind the desk, whatever. And so Neeb is that player right now.
He's that guy trying to give a lot of North American fans, specifically us Americans, hope. And going into this, I think we joked about this when we were doing our warm-ups for the broadcast, but there's not really any map that we hate as much in this matchup as Deadwing. Is there anything else you think, as far as the vetoes go, that could have a big impact on this matchup?
I think the preferences here are mostly going to be stylistic. Like, Neeb vetoes Deadwing because he's probably played enough NA ladder to know that this is an incredibly uncomfortable and annoying map in a lot of situations. Although, to be fair, in this group, I don't think Deadwing is going to be much different from the other maps, because Hart and Polt are not going to play a passive 4-base style.
Yeah.
You know, like, there's going to be 4 easily accessible bases, but they're still going to be playing that hyper-aggressive marine tank style anyway. None of these players are really known for playing mech, and the only player that I think I've actually seen play mech recently is Neeb. So,
yeah. I recall a game. It feels. I guess it was a while ago when the last time Neeb was in the round of 16. We got to see him bust out a little bit of mech play against. I believe he pulled it out against Revival. Against Zerg. But in TvT, there was one build he used, the really fast, kind of like Mass Blue Flame Hellion push with a couple tanks against Polt, which he was actually able to beat him with. But you're right, it was a while ago. I think a lot of people, if you're tuning in, it's important to set the record straight. TvT. If you're thinking that this is going to be a long day anyway, it's like, yeah, we lost a player, but it's Terran versus Terran. TvT is a very explosive matchup right now.
These games will probably be shorter than basically any other ones that you'll see in recent times. And you will be reintroduced to the glory that is TvT. It's a matchup, it's kind of like the lost matchup. Because for such a long time, Terrans were doing so poorly that it just didn't exist. There was no TvT in high-level tournaments. And if that TvT even existed, often it wasn't really covered. No. It was like one TvT between some low-level Terran and some super high-level Terran, and they just ignored it. It was early on in the tournament, and then they keep going. And by the time it gets to the round of 16 or the round of 32, a lot of the tournaments in recent times have been, 8 Protoss, 6 Zergs, 2 Terrans, and the Terrans never met each other for so long. But it's really great to see the randomness at work in the group selection process, giving us a full group of nothing but Terran versus Terran.
Yeah, it's going to be a very action-packed matchup. Like you said, none of these guys play passively. Yep. Even Neeb, I believe, and it was either this season or last season, rounds of 32, he had a match against Tasia, and even he was busting out those very fast gas first builds, the fast Hellion Marine drop.
Well, I mean,
like everybody's doing these very heavy. Like I wouldn't be surprised if most games we saw gas first out of both players.
Let's just be clear. Like high-level Terrans do not play passive.
Yeah.
With very, very few exceptions. The last Terran that I can really think that would play that type of style and actually compete is Goody.
Yeah.
And he has also kind of fallen off. I think Heart of the Swarm was not kind to the more passive meching style because speed medevacs are so incredibly strong at just putting the Terran army is so positional. It's so much, if you can put your army somewhere and you get, the 3 seconds it takes to unload and siege all your tanks, all of a sudden you have such an incredibly strong position, and the medevacs allow you to put that large army, in your opponent's main, in your opponent's natural. You can quickly jump from your main to your natural. It makes it very hard for you to take a third base because all of a sudden you have so much more room to cover. It makes it very hard for you to play a more macro-based style because all of a sudden you have less units than you would otherwise.
It does make things a bit tricky. And of course, so you're looking at Neeb here. This guy, man, he's
I've never
pretty
actually
young.
seen him before.
There's not a lot. He doesn't stream a lot. When he did, he didn't use camera or anything.
Yep.
He's a pretty reserved guy. But he is the US of A hope for this tournament at the moment.
I didn't realize he's been in WCS Premier so many times. Very consistent. The most notable thing that I remember Neeb doing was when he knocked out Huck of WCS, and I'm not sure exactly what that was, but I remember watching Huck lose and then seeing the tweets that came after. But that's got to have been at least a year ago, maybe even more than that. But a lot of very consistent performances in WCS America, but not a whole lot besides that. We haven't really seen him travel. He hasn't attended any of the Red Bulls this year. He hasn't attended MLG, I think.
I don't think we've seen him at any offline events.
Yeah.
He's I guess he's young enough at the point where if there's an event during the school year, it's like right about now. Things are probably getting a little bit awkward since he's still in high school.
I wonder if he's skipping school to play today. That would be awesome.
It's like, well, I made a couple $1,000s playing StarCraft. It's worth it. But the other player we have up here, Hart. Hart has been an impressive story to follow this year. I think a lot of people would have said if you had looked at him before, especially last season when I was mostly blown away. He's like, oh, Hart's really aggressive. He's kind of cheesy.
Yeah.
But he's played some incredibly good straight-up games.
Yeah, he's definitely adjusted his style. A lot of players, they have like a fundamental, a style that naturally resonates with them. And that's a style that they go back to more and more than anything else. And for players like Maru and Hart and Marine King, it's a very aggressive cheese-based style. And when they first surge onto the scene, they can win all their series playing that same style. But the longer they're around, the more people are going to be reacting to that style. You know, when Hart first came onto the scene and first started playing in tournaments, he was taking people out left and right, proxying buildings, cutting corners, making extra units, pulling SCVs. But eventually, you kind of know what to expect, and Hart has made an incredibly impressive job adjusting his style and becoming not just a cheeser, but a more well-rounded player, so his opponents don't really know what to expect anymore.
Yeah, he's made a really great series of developments, of course. He is the blue Terran player in the Northwest to kick off this TvT Fest. Representing Team Axiom, he is Hart.
And in the bottom right-hand corner, the lone American for WCS America. Give it up for Fnatic's Neeb! All right, depot. You know, so it's interesting, the supply depot at the top of the ramp, this isn't much to talk about, but there's not much to talk about right now anyway. When I was... If you consider where Hart builds his supply depot, which is right next to the command center, where Neeb builds his supply depot, Neeb's supply depot basically costs like 15 to 20 more minerals than Hart's, because the travel distance, the travel time of the SCV to go there and come back.
Mined once or twice.
Right.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like a big deal, and it's probably not, but it's just kind of interesting the hidden costs associated with the placement of buildings.
Yeah, because that SCV also becomes the one that builds that gas, and Hart is showing us what we see a lot of. You know, as two Terrans, I guess we'll play a lot on the North American ladder. We know that gas first builds, I think, overall are still very, very popular. I like gas first builds myself.
Yep,
most of the time.
A lot of the recent balance patches, and when I say recent, I mean the last year, 6 months worth, have focused. You know, it was interesting because the changes seem to be focused around the other matchups, but they affected TvT more than anything else. And I'm talking about siege tanks. Siege no longer requires a research.
Yeah.
And that was supposed to be like so you could play safer against Zerg or something, but it really just made tanks really strong in this matchup. And then Cloak got cheaper. And I think the intention there was perhaps to make Cloak more viable against Protoss and Zerg, but Cloak is awful against Protoss, and it just made gas first builds against in TvT much stronger. And so there's been so many adjustments. You know, siege tanks don't require research. Cloak is half cost. Medevacs have speed boost that since the beginning of Heart of the Swarm have lent themselves to opening up for a very fast tech-based style in this matchup.
Yeah, and that's been dominating the matchup overall. Neeb has opted to go for an expansion-based build. There are a lot of risks going with Reaper against the style. Hart, we've seen this trend pop up a lot more in the last few months, the opening with a Reaper out of gas first, and if Hart can actually... The position for Neeb's Reaper isn't bad, but it's going to die anyway.
Yeah.
He either had to stand there, he maybe could have killed Hart's Reaper, but he would have lost it to the Marine anyway.
Yeah, the
and
Marine
now he has to deal with the Hellion and the
Marine
Reaper.
was coming down. This is actually going to be pretty annoying for Neeb right now because it's going
Neeb
to be...
doesn't have any units on the field.
Yeah, the reactor is just finished, so 2 Marines are going to come out, but 2 Marines aren't going to be sufficient against this 1 Reaper and Hellion. And behind this, Hart is actually going to go for an early Cloak Banshee. And
oh, this is so annoying.
Yeah, it's so close to finishing.
If he goes up this ramp, like he can just kill these 2 Marines already pulling SCVs. Neeb, this is one of those things, man. These gas first builds, there's even against something as that would seem as safe as a Reaper, you just open up with a slightly later Reaper, and the Reaper plus Hellion just completely wrecks most standard Reaper openings.
Yeah, and he'll be able to establish control of his natural now. The problem for Neeb is that Reaper he was relying on in order to get scouting information. So he doesn't know that the follow-up here is Banshee. And that's going to make things very uncomfortable for him because you can see he's already put his factory on the reactor. Neeb is expecting Hart's transition to be into Marine Hellion, Elevator, or Mass Hellions. And so he's put his factory on the reactor in anticipation of that, but he has absolutely no way to deal with the Cloak Banshee. The engineering bay is just starting, but the engineering bay is not going to be finished for another 30 seconds or so.
And the Reaper poked the SCV that wanted to build that starport originally, so this Viking's delayed by a solid 10 or so seconds, and These units at the bottom of the ramp, Hart might lose these, but he's trading away little by little, and now
it's all about the setup for the Banshee.
Yeah, there's nothing here.
The engineering bay has literally just finished now, so it's far too late to actually put turrets up in time for this Banshee. The first Viking will be out shortly, but Neeb has no anti-air right now. He has no Marines at all. Cloak is now finished, and with one scam, but with one Banshee, he might not even be able to get that one Banshee. The Banshee is going to be able to escape.
Really nice. And Hart is going to kill even another SCV over here. His follow-up is, I think, very typical in this matchup. You get the Raven, you go straight for tanks. I wouldn't even be surprised to see a Medevac or Viking follow-up. It's going to be Viking first. I guess he's going to attack the front. There's not really any ground forces to stop this push.
Yeah, I think he's going to follow up here. Use the Banshee in conjunction with the ground forces to basically just break open Neeb's front. And you can see Neeb is actually opting for some sort of mech transition. He's going to probably start a Raven here, but he's got 4 Hellions against what will probably be 2 siege tanks plus a Banshee plus a Raven plus a Viking. It's going to be very hard for him to actually defend this follow-up. And the other thing, well, actually the economies are basically even right now.
Yeah.
Even with the number of workers lost. Let's see, what was that scam? Okay. So Hart he knows that his opponent is playing mech, basically. If he was playing bio, Neeb would have already transferred the barracks onto the factory. It's still possible that he could transition into bio at some point, but it's
just unlikely.
Yeah, it's relatively unlikely. And that also is going to give Hart the confidence he wants in order to move across the map. You can see he's going to go with these siege tanks and Marines. He wants to hit before the Hellion count gets too out of control, before the Raven, Neeb's Raven accumulates too much energy.
The thing is, there's just such a big production discrepancy. When you see that scan, you know that Neeb can't even produce that many units. Now the Raven is here. He could have dropped something like a point defense zone, but he wants to probably just put auto turrets.
Yeah, he's going to put auto turrets down. He's going to try and just break the front here.
With the tanks and 2 auto turrets, the Hellions don't do bonus damage versus this. His natural is about as good as dead. Like the armory is close to finishing, but even that might not be enough to break this, and I honestly don't think it is.
Yeah, Hellbats will be a lot stronger than Hellions. They do a lot of damage, but 2 auto turrets, 2 siege tanks, 1 Banshee, and 1 Viking. And now Neeb's going to go for it. He's bringing everything he's got.
Yeah, I mean, he moves up. The SCVs come off the line, too. It's nice. He does get on top of the tanks slowly but surely, picks one of them off. But even if he kills the tanks now, there's just so many Marines left over, and he can place another auto turret soon. Not to mention this Banshee still being alive, and the Vikings can't really get close enough to stop it because there's Marines here.
Yep. And he's going to do whatever he can to try and stabilize this position, but there's just too much. GG. Hart takes game number 1.
Yeah, like we said, TvT, it's a very explosive matchup, and that opening out of Hart, the first time I saw it, I think it might have been like Yoda versus Cure at Battlegrounds Online. I feel like I missed the start of this trend, but you open up with the regular gas first, you build your single Marine, which can usually help you deflect whatever cheddar or scouting comes in, but then that Reaper that comes after just wasn't standard, I think, a while ago. I feel like it's only recently popped up.
It's a very new style that players have started doing, and I think there's kind of 2 ways that we've seen that. One is with Flash, where he'll go from that Reaper Hellion directly into Reactor Hellion, into Raven. And the other style, I guess, is what we just saw Hart do, using that early Reaper Hellion to get a little bit of pressure. It denies scouting, which is very important, and then he was basically in the dark. He had no idea what was coming next.
Yeah, that's just like, it feels like such a nuanced way to punish a regular Reaper opening, because you expect the Reaper to get scouting information and be able to maybe pick off a worker or 2 against someone who's going gas first, but in reality, because you get such a fast reactor to follow up that Reaper, you generally don't have any other units aside from it, and that's what makes that Hellion so much stronger than in a normal game. And at that point, you might as well have just scanned and opened up with Marines.
Yeah, the first Reaper getting picked off for Neeb there was really devastating, because with 1 Reaper and 2 Hellions standing at the top of your ramp, you can kind of deflect that Reaper Hellion. Maybe you pull 1 or 2 SCVs, and then it's not so big of a deal, but he didn't anticipate the Reaper follow-up from Hart. And that Reaper follow-up is a little bit strange, because Hart's Marine count was so low that if he had to defend against some kind of Banshee play, it would have been a bit tougher. because he doesn't really have that normal anti-air that you would have if you were constantly building Marines, for example.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true as well. The Marines are so important, even before that Raven comes out. But we are potentially another quick game away from this guy going down. So without Major in the group, if he loses this map, he would just end up playing the loser of the winners match, quote unquote. But we'll have to see, as he could still take these next 2 games. He is the red Terran player in the top left position, representing Fnatic. He is Neeb. 16-year-old American Terran wonder.
He smells weakness. And in the bottom left-hand corner, coming from Korea, playing for Axiom, he is Heart! Guess first from Heart. Neeb opting for an early barracks. Yeah. Well, not an early barracks, but a barracks before
barracks
gas.
first. Yeah.
And we'll have to see. Is he gonna go? He's gonna go Reaper.
It's gotta
once
be
again.
Reaper.
I think this is a pretty smart build for this map. I'm not sure how good of an idea it would be against Heart though. So I like the early Reaper on this map because sometimes players will opt for CC first, but I don't feel like Heart is the type of player that would do that.
No.
He seems very much like the person who would be trying to meta against CC first, punish it, do that aggression, rather than a person that you would go CC first. But of course, Reaper is a very normal opening in all situations. It's just so general, you get a lot of information with it. As long as that first Reaper stays alive, you get a decent amount of pressure, and you usually should be able to react to whatever is coming with plenty of time.
I think the biggest issue for this series, like you look at the way that Heart plays, and I have to agree with you, he's not the kind of guy to go Command Center first. Honestly, if this was a best of 9 and Heart went up 4-0, the final game, like he would have gone all 5 games gas first, I feel. Like he's going to play Fast Factory because worst case scenario is you do some sort of pressure and your opponent does a build that cuts an equal amount of cost in its own way and you trade evenly or something and then you just play out a regular game. And best case scenario is you do crippling amounts of damage that allow you to win the game with your follow-up, which is what happened last game.
Gonna hang out with each other. Yeah, what we see from the Kespa Koreans more often is attempts to counter gas first play. It's like 2 players will both open gas first, but one of them opens like Fast Raven, and the other one gets a Viking first. And the intent there is just to deal with that early Banshee like they've recognized that the Banshee is so incredibly strong that they're going to try and counter the possibility of it. And it looks like both players are actually opening almost the exact same way. And Neeb will be able to keep that Reaper alive this time if he just sends it straight home. It should have no trouble. This map, of course, is going to be much easier to defend because the natural is not exposed.
Yeah.
And Neeb's Reaper will regenerate enough life, and then it can just turn around and begin fighting against Heart's Reaper.
And he does have an SCV in position as well to help soak up just a shot or 2, so Heart can't break him yet. He has the Hellion out now, but those first 2 Marines are about to pop. Will he kill the Reaper? I don't think he should be able to get this.
Not with the 2 Marines there.
No.
The Marines have, I mean, they're fragile, but they have very nice damage output at this time. And at this point now, there's no way Heart can really move up. Oh, that's interesting. I wonder why...
Neeb's not building one of his refineries in his main.
Yeah,
I was slightly caught off guard by this.
Maybe
he
started... I don't know. I don't understand why the gas geyser would start and then not finish like that. But Neeb is now going into the same style, and I guess this is just his response to gas first. It doesn't appear that... Last game I said that he was going Reactor Hellion because he was expecting gas first Marine Hellion. And I don't think that's correct because he's making the same decision here and there's not that same kind of pressure that perhaps would trick him. And this is also basically the same build from last game. So it looks like Neeb just is going to defend the early Banshee with turrets and an early Viking, and then he'll be able to transition into heavy Hellion production. Probably plans to get that armory around the same timing to defend that. But right now, Neeb is in the dark. He's trying to use his Reaper to get into Heart's base. At this point, I think he can basically assume that it's going to be Banshee. And the reason for that is when the Reaper tried to get in, there were, a couple of Marines there. If it was anything else, then you would expect you wouldn't really expect the Marines to be there.
Yeah.
Now the Banshee's gonna come up, already starting to work away on these SCVs, and it's not. Oh, okay. He should. Okay, he's not gonna finish the turret, but he will lose these mules.
Yeah.
Definitely not fun. There's a lot of time left on those bad boys to keep mining with.
Yeah, and this is a pretty unusual series of mistakes from Neeb here. Like, the Gas First has a Banshee timing. It's very easy to know. Like, every Terran at this level of play knows when the Gas First Banshee comes out. And so if your build is not timed out to have turrets in time, then it's not really a build you should be doing. And it seems like Neeb knew he needed the turrets at a specific timing, but either the engineering bay was a little bit late or he was a little bit sloppy on getting the turret down in his natural, and that allowed Hart to get a couple of workers and perhaps more importantly deny 2 mules. And that makes Neeb's transition here just a little bit uncomfortable. He doesn't have the money he needs to get the constant supply depots. He's supply blocked right now. His armory is starting, but that's again at the expense of supply. SCV production is inconsistent at the moment, and that kind of all comes down to that little bit of extra damage the Banshee did.
And those little slowdowns have a huge impact as the game goes on. And so Neeb, I think it's safe to say this opening, once again, we're going to see that mech play. He's moved the barracks away from that tech lab, so we're not going to see any level of fast bio play. And I think with this reactor, yeah, he's going to put out some Vikings. Maybe we'll see some very heavy Hellbat drops, a la Flash style. He did it on this map versus Tasia at Intel Extreme Masters in Toronto. And then he made it look pretty sexy, even though he lost that map.
It definitely... It's very clear at this point that Neeb is favoring mech in this matchup, and he will be using mech in this build, in this map. The amount of time it would take to transition at this point is unreasonable.
A bit comical.
Yeah. Two more factories go down for Neeb, and very soon he's going to get his tech labs on there, probably start pre-igniter, and perhaps start +1 weapons for those Hellbats. Right now he's in a pretty safe position. Hellbats are incredibly strong at this phase in the game. Until you at least have stim, there's almost no threat given an equal position unless it's a very committed attack from the non-meching player. And very soon, these 2 medevacs are going to allow him a good measure of control over the map. You can see he's spread out his Vikings to defend against potential drops from Hart, and these 2 medevacs, he may use them aggressively, he may use them more defensively. Since Hart hasn't really been active on the map, he will probably opt to use them to put some pressure on his opponent.
Yeah, I'm feeling with this... Oh, I do really like that this Banshee's still roaming around too, but... Yeah, it's at what point does Hart actually want to get aggressive without a third base? That's what I find most interesting.
Yeah, so probably the earliest he'll do anything is with these first 2 medevacs. He may even wait for combat shields as well. But against a meching player, you either have to commit to a lot of Vikings and even more than 1 Banshee, sometimes some number of siege tanks, and do a relatively early push before they have this medevac count, or you have to wait until you've got some upgrades, combat shields, stim, medevacs, and that allows you to position yourself more appropriately against a meching player and also to outlast the Hellbat damage output. You can see with 4 medevacs full of Hellbats, it looks like Neeb is actually looking to take a fight here.
I mean, there's a good amount of Marines with this army.
He's so unaware of what Hart is doing, and Hart knows where his army is.
Well, this is going to be awkward.
This might actually go into a full-on... No,
this early?
He didn't get far enough across
I think
the map
Hart
for a base raid.
getting his tanks in position makes this really tricky. He's moving the medevacs back. He wants to drop on top of this, but I don't think just this many Hellbats are actually going to cut it. Even throwing the auto turrets in the natural the main base of Neeb makes this so difficult. Yeah, there's so many auto turrets. And the bio just sits behind and just fires away.
Yep. The Hellbats are trying to make some traction here, getting closer and closer to the bio. But Hart has such a good position, and he has so many units in Neeb's base. He's going to land the Vikings now, but there's just nothing for it. Hart dancing his units. He knows this game is his now.
He's like, okay, you only have 3 factories. They're all right here. Kill everything as it comes out, and Hart cleans up game number 2. He is going to move on to the winner's match to face off against Pult. Neeb didn't seem like the openers gave him a lot of momentum in the first 2 games.
Yeah, the game went into a very even position where that should have gone into basically a macro game. but because Neeb had so little awareness, map awareness, Hart was able to outposition him and get into his natural in a place where he didn't have siege tanks, his auto turrets were late. You know, Neeb was set up in a position where, Hart was set up in a position where Neeb had to fight right now because he was losing so much of his infrastructure. He was losing factories, siege tanks were coming out and dying immediately. This engagement could have gone fine for Neeb, but it needed to happen out on the map, not in this enclosed position where Hart was already set up. You can see he's basically attacking into Hart's concave, and that's just not going to work.
Yeah, the auto turrets bought him a lot of time.
Yep.
The positional advantage that they give, they block space like a building, so you can't just you drop the Hellbats on them, but it messes up the way that they're all going to move around too, and just being caught out of position. You know, as a meching player, the number one thing that the rule of mech is to always be in the right place. It's so much more important because when you're with bio and two players of stim units, you can kind of chase a little bit if you're caught off. You can try to quickly spread your units out, but there's no way to quickly siege your tanks because then if you're in the middle of the field, the other guy just runs away from you, and that's that's one of the reasons why you had to just run back, and that allows the bio to just hit you that much harder.
Yeah, for sure. Mech is a much more positional style, and most mech styles are very positional. There's a couple players like 4GG who favor a very Hellion-based style, and that can it's like a mix between mech and bio. It's like relatively mobile because you make so many Hellions, but at the same time, it's not quite as cost-efficient in small numbers as the bio is. But the way Neeb was playing it with the Hellbats and in the Medivacs with that relatively low siege tank count, he was just at a point in his build where everything was so fragile.
Yeah.
And Hart maneuvering around the map, he crumbled.
Yep, great play by Hart. As we mentioned before, since Major's not competing here today, Neeb will simply face off against whoever loses our next series. Our next best of three will be Pult against Hart. Let's hear from Josh at the social media desk.
Thank you, gentlemen. A fast 2-0, but Neeb is still not out of it yet. We'll see him in the decider match. Make sure to send your tweets using hashtag WCS of who you're rooting for. Also, you will have noticed that promo code that came online during the match. That promo code you want to write down, and stay tuned for more promo codes from some of the products we have from Newegg, our sponsor. I'm going to be checking in with some reps at Newegg a little bit later today, but make sure to check out more information about the different products from their vendors that they're going to be showcasing. And that is at esl.gg/Newegg So after that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have the winners matchup. That's Pult versus Hart, another TvT after this. Stay tuned.